Welcome to another episode of Mommy Mondays with Jenn Pinto and Danesha Vargas. Well. It's been quite a week, I must say. It's been quite a week. Like, y'all don't understand. Like, we go through so much just being mothers, right? I think every mother can relate. And then it's like you want to also do, the other business ventures that you're part of. And then life just so many things are always happening with children. It feels like. But anyways, yeah, but we're here. We made it. It's Monday. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever time frame you're listening to this. Today's going to be a really interesting one. So we all know that we're in a time now in this world where there's a lot of division. More than, I mean, it's probably always been, but I mean in the sense of like a lot of people now like are really starting to feel divided for many reasons of, especially after what transpired after the pandemic. So we're all on these different basically frequencies at this point, and we're clashing, and one says no, this is the right way, no, that's the right way, no, this is the truth, no, this is the lie. And at the end of the day, the reality is that we have to just do our best to study and gain knowledge on a lot of things that originally were told to us one version of the story, and then as you do your homework you start to find out the other versions that are out there, and then you start to piece together which one makes sense to you as a whole. And when it comes to these things like conspiracies, as everybody calls them now, right? Like that's a big thing, and about misinformation and all these things. We have to wonder at this point as parents, your child, I know when I was in school, I know there was a certain way I was indoctrinated and what history I was told and what I was told about like the planets. And so I had a certain mindset of what I thought everything was. And then as I did my homework, I'm like, hold up, none of that makes sense anymore, But our children, there is I don't know what to call them, but whoever is in power and in charge
was in power.
Right. Right. It's as if basically they're going to create the narrative that they want to create, right? And when they do that, because they control so much, like the education, the medical system, the workforce, like their ownership of many things. So because of that, they're able to control really whatever narrative they want, because if they want whatever story they want to give in history, that's what they're going to teach to the teachers to provide that curriculum for your child to learn from. Tell me, how many schools do Blacks and Latinos own? I'll wait, because we don't really own them. Those big institutions of schools are all owned by, again, the people in quote unquote power. So they're gonna throw it into the schools, and they're gonna have the hospitals too. Tell me what Blacks and Latinos own their own hospitals. Yeah, I'll wait. So we don't own anything, okay? So because of that, they're able to put it in movies, they're able to put it in the medical system, they're able to put it in the schools, and then all of a sudden, there's a certain reality, yeah, being created, which then moves into the future and what the future holds, So you have to decide what part of history do you want to be a part of, when you look at these conspiracies and all these differences, because what starts to happen, and Danesha, I want you to get into like the steps or whatever you want to call them, because that was like, but like, you have to decide what part of history you want to be part of, right? And what's going to be your reality that's going to help you elevate to whatever next life, whatever you do after this experience, right? So when you're going through these quote unquote conspiracies, I think we need to all have an open mind about everything, because we all can have an agreement that you're starting to see that you've been lied to in a lot of things, like not just a little bit of things, a lot of things. And as you go deeper into the rabbit hole, you know, you go into these different levels and you start to realize that everything is connected. Like I just said, the schools, the medical, everything is connected. The Hollywood, everything is one, like one machine being controlled in so many different ways and so many hands in it, you know? So, but when it comes to these things, there is an emotional like process that comes with it. And I want you to get into that, Danesha.
I think I call it like, for example, there's like 7 stages of grief when someone passes away. And they're like, you know, like disbelief, acceptance, anger, all that stuff. So I think it's everyone, when they come into new information, there is a certain amount of steps that happen to you when you come into this information. It's like the first step, it's like you want to warn people. You want to let people know, like, oh, this is happening, because you know this information, right? Then you go through the process of like, you're angry, you're super angry, and you can't, no, not right now. Hold on, Jen, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to.
You're good. Listen,
Stay with,
real
stay
life
with
mother.
right there. Tell them to come here and stay in this area. Unless daddy said it was okay, all right? They completely not following the rules that I told them.
Listen, I thought it was my kids because don't follow no damn rules.
Yeah, so when we come across this information, we go through these processes and we start stressing. So there's a certain point that I know a lot of people are like, what is even the fucking point? What is the point of fighting this? What is the point of going against all this information or trying to tell people or warn people? What is the point of trying to do better? What if, you know what I mean? Like, it's like you're going into a black hole. That's what we think, right? But in reality, we have to understand that all of these things are being done with a very specific purpose. We are these amazing, incredible, powerful souls. And that's the reason why all these things are put in place. So we're playing chess out here. And a lot of us have been trained to think that we're playing checkers. And that's why we think we're losing, when in reality, this is how it is. Like, this is what it is. Like, they want us to worry. They want us to be scared and be in fear. They want us to be angry. They want us to, worry. Worrying is a big one. We already are dealing with depression, anxiety. So you see, it's all working. And so when you go through these stages, it's normal. So it's funny because when you've already gone through all these stages, you can tell what stage other people are in and how much information they've actually had access to. You start to see, okay, this person knows these quote unquote conspiracies. And so when you go down these different stages, I want you to know that it's also normal. Like, you are going to want to warn your people. You are going to want to tell people what's going on. You are going to get angry. But what you don't want to do is get lost in that vicious cycle of worrying, anxiety, panic attacks, and just losing hope. Because in reality, the reason why these plans are in place is because we already won.
Yeah.
We already won. And I think also one of the things that people forget is that in this country, we have something called public record. Everything is on public record because they indoctrinated us to be public since the day we were born, since our parents migrated over here and literally registered us to the government. Like, all these things, they're already put in place to make you fail. So when you understand public record, you understand that if you want to visit a court case, you can do that. You can see the conversations that they had. If you want to see medical files, you can go and look at medical journals. You can look at clinical trials. This is not like only, like we have this misconception that only professionals hold, that they're like the gatekeepers of this information. And it's really not. Actually, this is all public record. So you might want to be a little careful when you think about someone and say, oh, this person's crazy or whatever. No, this person might have done their due diligence while you haven't.
Yeah.
And that's the part that we kind of forget, is like, we even have to find out who invented the term conspiracy, who
to add to that too, that, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, and we were just having this conversation at my daughter's birthday party the other day with some friends, and it's about how like there's certain classified information that they hold away from the public for a certain amount of years. And it's been that time where a lot of those things are now like expired of their time, that now that information can be released. And a lot of these classified information that at one point we were told, no, that's not true, is coming out now that it was true, like they were lying to you type of thing, or whatever the case is. So things are unfolding like that a lot more. And that's why you're seeing so much information being put out there. And yeah, some of it can be misconstrued or just exaggerated. But there is a truth in a lot of everything that's going on. There's a lot of truth of the good in something, and there's a lot of truth of the bad in something. And you have to just choose what reality, like I said, what's your history, what's your reality. I know that the one that I grew up in, when I look back, a lot of the things that my parents were ignorant to and subscribed to just off of a program, and really weren't in full awareness of what they were doing as parents, even though they did the best they could. A lot of the stuff that they subscribed to affected my health for many years. And it wasn't until I started digging deeper. So this becomes personal now. It's not just people, sometimes you have to realize that for a lot of people, there's a lot of anger because it becomes personal, because you realize you were a product of whatever they were trying to do, whether good or bad intentions, who knows, whatever the case is. Point is that it affected a lot of people in a negative way. And those negative ways are hidden from the public, and nobody knows as much of that data. So they're unable to really like make a conscious, decision without being swayed a certain way. And, when I had to really dig deeper into a lot of things, because I realized when it came to my health, there was a lot of ignorant decisions made. Yes. And I don't want to continue making those.
Exactly. And I also think that because they know that we're aware of this information, they also spread their own type of misinformation, their own fake trials, and their own little fake, also, like, for example, I saw this commercial. It's not a commercial, but it's like this ad, right? Or something like that. And it's like making fun of people that believe in like numerology, right? And it was like, oh yeah, well, I know, like, and of course it mentions like Trump, and it's like, oh, I bet you Trump is gonna win because it's 88, and 88, what's 88? Like, you better know what's 88. Like, it's making fun of something that is very real. So because we connect a lot to comedy, they spread a lot of misinformation and truth through comedy. And we think this is all a joke sometimes. And I think it's important to also know, like, you really have to, your intuition has to be clean. Your gut feelings have to be strong for you to decipher all the information out there. But one thing is that you'll start to notice that the things that are true, you start to see more and more and more of. You know what I mean? Like, you start connecting the dots. So just by you doing a tiny bit of research on your own, will change the way that you think about everything. Even if you bump into a little bit of misinformation here and there, you'll be able to decipher the truth. The problem is that we are just used to, like you said, the face that they put in front of us. They put this professional in front of us, and they indoctrinated our parents to trust this professional in front of us. And this professional is just interpreting public information.
That's it.
Yeah. So instead of you believing that person, if you read the information for yourself, your body has a different reaction to it than if another person tells you that you quote unquote trust. It's a completely different thing.
And it's so many things, because you have, you have divisions in what people think about vaccines. You have divisions on what people think about the planet. Some people say it's a round earth. Some people say it's a flat earth. You have the whole stuff about climate change. We have, HAARP, like the weather modifications, things that they have, you have history, just so many things in history that have a lot of holes in it, so it's so many layers to it, and it can be overwhelming for certain people that are not ready for all that information. And that's where a lot of it's called cognitive dissonance comes in,
Yes. Where can you hear me, Jenn?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Oh, I thought I lost you there for a second. And we know, like, cognitive dissonance is when when your truths, your truths don't match.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's something that is not true, and then you want to ignore that part because then it will completely destroy the reality of what you thought that truth was the whole time.
Right, because those truths mold your decisions in life.
Exactly. Believe it or not, in every single way. Like, people will be like, oh, why does it even matter if the earth is round or flat? Because if it isn't round, do you know the amount of attention, amount of money, amount of planning, amount of lying that has to happen for you to get a whole society believing one thing?
Yeah.
That's sick.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of people will be like, oh, no, that's impossible. Actually, at this point, everything is possible. They're modifying our weather.
Yeah, like the HAARP is real. HAARP is real. Like, let's get that straight. HAARP is real, dude.
Yeah, and because also history is taught to us a certain way, we never really take the initiative to research things ourselves, because there's a lot of books out there, a lot of things that will connect the dots for you, and books that you could be like, nah, that's BS. I don't believe a word because it doesn't match with anything else, But I say that because if you go back in time enough, you would realize that the earth has been heating forever. That's literally what it's been doing. It just gets hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter. So why would we come over here and be like, why is it getting so hot? It's the humans that are doing it. Okay, is it the humans or is it these huge corporations that are destroying the earth in that certain way? Like, it's their hand that is in this play.
Yeah.
And they want us to think that it's us individually. Oh, save water while you're brushing your teeth. I'm not saying don't do those things, but they make us feel like we are responsible for this damage that's happening in the earth, which it is happening. Us humans, we are kind of destroying the earth in a certain way, but
because of our paradigm, the paradigm that we're living through is causing that.
Exactly.
That programming is causing the reality. You know what I mean? So it's like, the truth, it's like you don't want to get so deep in the truth that then you become like like enslaved to the matrix of that. You go from one matrix to another, but it's like now you're obsessed with conspiracies. Now you're just like, like you said, you get anxiety and all these things. So it's like you want to know the truth to know where you're going, because you have to know where you came from to know where you're going. I'm very big on that, because when you start knowing where you came from, you move differently on how you plan your future, because there comes a certain pride in you realizing how much power you got to take within yourself and govern yourself in order to really live in freedom within this chaos that we're in the mix of. You know what I mean? So it's like you can only subscribe to certain realities within this whatever you want to call it, experience, because the more you subscribe to the ones that are really, really heavy, and you're all through social media, you're watching the news every day, you're seeing every single page on your feed about something negative, you guys don't understand how much your subconscious takes in. Like, it takes in everything, everything, bad, good, in between, whatever it is, it just says, I got it, I got it, I got it. And it becomes a reality, whether it's not a reality. So because our thoughts have so much power, because our thoughts create our true reality, like we're creating the movie as we're thinking our thoughts. So when you got a history where all we think about is, for example, what was it? What was it? So you say Black people come from slaves, right? So now we have this mentality where Black people just think they come from slaves. So what does that do to your spirit, right? You're in a lower frequency like that. So now what happens? They take over Hollywood, and what happens in Hollywood? Tell me how many damn slave movies they have made. Like, all right, bro, we get it. They keep feeding you the same thing. It's repetition, right? Because the more you keep doing something, you become that. Your mind becomes that. That reality becomes your like truly your reality and part of your story, part of your experience. So you start to attract more things within that type of reality of suffering and pain and all these things. So you're making decisions of your life based on a programming of you being lower than. So you think of yourself less than. You have to prove things to people. You have to do extra to show that you're good enough. So there's this level of insecurity that comes with that. And that's what they have done. You look at the education, they never teach you the true history of where our people come from. Like, we've been here, acting like we just came here on boats and that was it. Like, bro, we've been here everywhere. If you do your homework, we have inhabited every part of this planet from the beginning, And that right there says a lot. So if we didn't know that we were in charge of basically this planet and had this responsibility of this kingdom and all these things that we were given, right? And then for whatever reason, we just went lower and lower with our vibration by the things we were subscribing to. It's like, that's why in order to level up, it's like, you got to really start picking and choosing your battles on how much of this stuff you're going to take with you. And that's not to say you're not in tune with reality, but if you keep feeding into it, it's going to somehow seep into your reality. And that's not saying that people like you're going to be immune to whatever's happening in the world. You're not, but you can't control everything. Mm-hmm. So you can only control but what you can control, and you don't want to feed into it. So you make sure you take the precautions to be safe in whatever actions you do. And then on the other hand, you also don't feed into to yourself every single day to feed into that fear part of you that then's going to make fear-based decisions on things you do in life.
Mm-hmm. I want to touch base also on something you said. Like, you said you have to go back. Like, you have to know where you came from in order to move forward. So like how you were saying, like, I feel like if you go back in history, you can check also that it's not just Black people that were slaves. It's not just, it was like actually people were slaves before Black people. And it's like, if we really want to talk about this whole critical race theory and stuff like that, then, like, what are they really teaching you? Are they teaching you all the history, or just a certain part that's going to shift your reality, like you're saying, So it's also very tricky in that way. Yeah. That, like, we really have to understand where we come from, who we are, in order to know where it is that we're moving. Like you said, if you don't know who you are, you can easily get shifted. You can easily, your mindset is completely going to change. And then now, like you said, your reality is going to change. It's not going to be the same thing. It's not going to be what you deep down, where your DNA was created for. Yeah. And it's really sad because when we really break it down, it's also done through medicine. And that's why we don't have, like we always say, knowledge of self. We don't know how our bodies work. We don't know. So we're just being manipulated. So there's so many people that go, for example, to the doctor and are told, you have this, you have this, you have this, take this, that. And then they actually believe it so much that even when they come across someone, I'm going to give you an example as like when women are pregnant and they give birth to their baby and their baby's umbilical cord was tied around their neck, and then they say, oh, they gave me a C-section because my baby almost died because the umbilical cord was tied around the neck. You know how many women don't want to believe when I tell them that their babies don't even breathe through there? That it was a very unnecessary intervention.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, that one's a hard one, I think, for a lot of women. I don't think they want to believe that they got like, like just manipulated to that degree, to believe that. Danesha's probably yelling at her kids right now.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I was joking.
I used the bathroom and now my husband has to take him. He's in the middle of a softball game.
Oh my God. I'm like, she's probably yelling at them kids right now. Like, yo, chill out. No, but yeah, I got into so many different things in history. And my conclusion to a lot of things is really like, I think the world is like a dome. That's what I see it as. Like flat on the bottom and like a dome on top. That's the way I see it in my head.
I agree also. Not only that, like if you want to bring history into there or like common sense even, not to make it sound like that, but it's common sense, like, and because that's what I say also, because of all these things, we've lost our common sense. It's not so common anymore. And it's because we don't even use our eyes to explore. We don't use our ears to explore. We don't use none of these like senses that were given to us anymore. Like we're just not using our vessels. We're not using our brains. We're not using our own power.
No, we're not. You're absolutely
right. And it's very messed up because they've taken our people and dumbed them down to the levels of like, okay, I don't know if anyone has seen a time lapse of the stars, but if you look at a time lapse of the stars literally circle us. And not in a way, like we see constellations, like that should be common sense enough that if they're telling you in school that that everything is moving all the time, okay, but how are those constellations always in place? How can we always see them? How is there one star that never moves? One star right in the center that never moves. So how is it? What's going on? Are we shooting towards that star that coincidentally, like, but then, okay, so if we're shooting towards that star, right, because our planet is moving according to science, then like it's just so many different things that we don't even realize that is being done, and a lot of people will probably listen to this and be like, oh, they've left. No, there's enough information out there already. When you go back,
like, I don't even know if people know these little things that I actually learned these things, I would say within the past like 6 years, this information. But one of them was that they never landed on the moon. That was all computerized. That was one thing that was like, supposedly that never happened. And then I never knew, what's it called? It's a whole movie series about this black slave. What's his name?
I don't know the name, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
But I think it was done by Alex Haley. I could be wrong with these names. Man, what's the name of it? Hold on. I gotta look this up but basically, like the whole that was never a true story. Mm-hmm. It was a story that this white guy made up. But people always thought it was a true story. Damn, what's it called? I think it was like the Kunta Kinte guy. Hold on. I sound mad. Not Alex Haley. What's his damn?
Yeah, but it's a lot of different things.
Yeah, when I get the name, I'm I'm remember and I'm gonna let y'all know. But basically, it's like the whole story was a lie. That wasn't true. That movie. Oh, Roots actually. Duh. Yeah, the whole movie or series, whatever, Roots. That was all a lie. That whole entire story. That was like a whole made up story.
There's a couple of stories that are lies because there's a lot of like public figures that they mention a lot. And I don't want to say any because I don't want people going into because you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like sometimes you just gotta tone it down a little bit for people so that they can reach the information where you're at. You know what I mean?
Nah, it's true. It's true. Very
You
true.
know, because then there's like a spectrum of information, right? And if you're all the way at the high end of the spectrum information, meaning like a lot of these lies that they're doing and a lot of these plots that they do, and then you say something, you completely lose credibility because that's another thing that they've taught us. Like they've taught us that if someone that you don't like is saying something, you don't even hear it and you don't think is the truth because you're like, oh, whatever. But it's like we have to stop that because also what happens when a lot of people know information is that the way that they talk, because they sound intellectual, because they sound like they know what they're talking about, you come off as a know-it-all to someone that is at a low vibration. So it's also very tricky because you'll hear someone and they'll be like, oh, that person thinks they know everything, so I don't hear anything they say, and we go into these like, I remember even let's just take something as simple as Trump. There are people that still really genuinely hate this man. I don't like the man. I never have, but there is some truth to the things that this man does that you need to recognize. And a lot of people won't recognize it because they already have this picture painted about him. And they won't even listen to anything that he's saying. And another thing that I would like to say is the media. The media is such
They're
like a part of the plan.
They're bought and owned, you know?
Yes, it's such a big part of this plan. And because they mind shift us, they literally shift our minds and our perceptions and the way that we think. The first time that I ever realized, because I've always just not given a fuck about politics, the very first time that I realized that we were being completely fooled, and I just needed to watch one clip. My husband, I had seen this press conference, right? But I didn't watch the press conference live. I watched it on the news. And I was like, yo, this man is crazy pants. Like, this dude is buck wild. He doesn't have no fucking filter. He's crazy. And it was Trump, something Trump was saying, right? Girl, my husband was in his room watching the press conference live. And he's like, yo, come watch this, right? I'm kind of annoyed because I'm like, I already saw it. I don't want to watch it. Yo, I watched it from beginning to end and it was completely different.
Yes.
What they had posted online. So they took clips of what he said and rearranged it to make it sound like something else. When I saw that that was the only proof I needed ever in my life for the media. That was the only proof I needed. After that, I saw the lie in everything that they ever reported on.
Oh yeah, and that's a lot of people. Like people don't understand. Like they only give you a certain part of the information so that it controls the narrative. So here's something that is not per se like that like that. But okay, for example, two things. There was a quote somebody had posted that people always say jack of all trades, master of none, right? And that's the part of the quote that we always hear, right?
Yeah.
So within that, what do you feel like? Oh, damn, I can't be doing too many things, right? It kind of discourages you, like, oh, I can't, I just gotta stick to one thing, blah, 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 right? But then I didn't know there was another part of the quote. Let me see if I can find it. That I was like, wait a minute, this changes the whole entire message.
Yes, it really does.
Hold on. I gotta find the full thing because
I think it's like, but all is better than none or something like that. it's very beautiful in reality, because when you really think,
Yeah.
like, wow, I can't believe that this whole time they've used that quote to kind of manipulate people. Because I've heard people have told me that to me, like,
Yes, they do. Oh my God, I got that told to me my whole freaking life.
yeah, it's like, just focus on one thing, because you're getting involved in too many things. And it's like, yo, but I'm passionate about all these things that I'm getting involved in.
Yes. Okay, here it is. It says, a jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one.
Mm.
Right? Because we are creative beings. You have to understand that. So if there's that itch in you and you're just like, I'm not living in my purpose, so I don't feel whatever, it's because you're supposed to. You're supposed to. Like, you have that choice. Like, you're supposed to, you know what I mean? So all these desires, we have the ability to manifest and get whatever we want and do as much as we want. But the truth is that when we look at all these different things that are being programmed to us, are being fed to us and being told to us, and it's keeping us in a specific type of like bubble and vibration in there, right? And you're like stuck in there where you're like running around doing so much, but then you actually feel like you're doing nothing, right? And you're just caught up in this trap. So that's the thing, is like, you wanna get out of the trap and start to actually live in your full purpose. So it's like, all right, take the information for what it is, take what works for you and throw out the rest. You know what I mean? Like, don't sit there going crazy. Take what works and makes sense to you, because if you're guided by your soul and you're guided by your inner being, the one that's in power here, right? You're guided by that, the force, God, that you're being guided by that. You're not going to be guided the wrong way, but you can't just ignore certain truths because we don't want to deal with them. We're going to have to deal with them. So when you go through, like Danesha was saying, these steps, it's like, in the beginning, yeah, you're going to get the anger and you go through all these things. Allow yourself to go through these emotions without rejecting the information and starting to, like, even though it can be a lot, take your breaks when you need to take your breaks. And that means like disconnecting from everything where you don't want to hear about nothing for a little while. You know what I mean? Because all this stuff does affect us in some way, shape, or form, whether we want to or not. And they're also going to affect our children. And that's the key here. Like, what we subscribe to is going to affect them. And that's not to say you don't want your kids to know what's the reality of what's going on in the world, but you also don't want them to be literally in pure fear every time they're walking out this door.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think any child should live like that, because there's some things that you can control for a short period of time, you know? But there's children watching the news all day and they're like terrified they're going to get some disease at any moment, you know?
Yeah, it's really,
That's so much stress on the kid. And then you're wondering why these kids are like just going through so much. Like, dude, let them fucking chill. Like, you know what I mean? They don't need to go through all that suffering. Like, why do we have this obsession with suffering, and that you have to suffer in order to make it to the next level? Like, there has to be this constant suffering. And it's like, no, we're suffering because of the things we're subscribing to, that they're creating this reality that causes a lot of suffering and a lot of worrying and a lot of panic and hysteria and all these things. So it's like, you really do control your reality. And I mean that in the sense where you're going to mold whatever that is, I don't want my children living in fear. And that is why I like, my kids honestly don't know anything about COVID. They really don't. They know they see people in masks, and then they ask me, like, should they wear one? I'm like, nah, you don't need one. You're good. You know what I mean? But I haven't like had that conversation with them. Again, my children are homeschooled, so it's a little different for me. My children are not out there like that. But I never really like went into it to scare them like that. I didn't want to do that. I honestly didn't. And I didn't have a reason to. They're not going anywhere where they're being like exposed and people are talking about them. They're going to come home, like, and then I would have to have that conversation. Like, nah. So
yeah, no, our kids definitely had questions about that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So unless like, your children, if they ask me, I'm not going to lie to them, you know what I mean? But that conversation hasn't come up, and I didn't feel it was necessary in my situation. But in others, these parents that they're going to have these children go to school, and those students are going to talk to their kids, you know what I mean? It's understandable that you're going to want to have these conversations with them, but you also don't want them to, again, be in like complete fear of life.
Yes. And, I want to also say that how you spoke about the jack of all trades, right? Another thing that was very strategically done, and I think it worked very well, was separating all the subjects of life. You
Yeah.
know, like everything in life is connected, every single thing. Um,
Everything.
people don't even understand, like, where does your body get like stuff to make itself? It's from the food that you eat, right? So we're disconnected from our diets, right? When we go to school, we get English in one subject, math in another subject, science in another subject, when in reality all these things were one.
Yeah.
There was like, it was like a world. Literally everyone in the world learned everything through life.
Yeah.
And when you think that, that's why sometimes people struggle with learning one subject over another, is because they don't have the full understanding of all the subjects. And that's something that I learned through like fixing the curriculum, and looking through curriculum for my children, because I'm doing the switch to homeschool also.
Yeah.
And one of the things I realized is that when you really break it down, before institutions, like before schools, like this way, which was actually something that happened through colonization, before that, all our children learned at home.
Yep.
And
Yep.
they learned, like, for example, if we're, for example, gonna learn about plants, right? We learn about the shapes of the plants. We learn to draw the plant. We learn to smell the plant and see what it looks like and what it feels like. Then we understand how the plant grows, how it feeds itself, how and then what can we make with this? So you're learning art, you're learning language, you're learning biology, you're learning what else? Food, because like, and recipes and chemistry, because you're making a recipe out of this herb. You learn your body. You know what I'm saying? And then it's like all these things are supposed to be learned, are supposed to be learned together. And that's why we're kind of lost as a society as well, because if your kid gets hurt or something and they don't know where they're hurt, like how can they describe, you know what I'm saying? Like these are all things that need to be taught to our children. And because some kids like one subject more than others or whatever, they're not really fully grasping the full concept of something.
Absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
I think that's also something that we've completely lost control over, is like, because common sense is somewhere in there also.
Yeah.
It's like questioning things. We do experiments with things, and we have a controlled experiment also, where like, okay, we're gonna test something. We test something one way because we need to figure out ourselves. You know
Absolutely.
what I'm saying? So one of the things that's gonna be in our curriculum is also food ingredients, so
Yeah.
that they can go themselves into the store one day when I'm not here and be able to know, is this something that my body needs? Is this something that, you know what I mean? Because that's
I love
another
doing that with my kids. I
thing.
mean, my children. I love doing that where they know they'll ask me the questions. What does this mean? What does that mean? And I'll let them know. I'm like, this is like a false thing for like, oh, this is a chemical, or this is like another word for sugar. Like, they know everything of when they're walking in. They know everything of when they're eating.
Yeah. So I think it's really important to kind of go back to the beginning, like you said, and just break everything down little by little and realize where in your life, and make those small pivots.
Yeah. You
Like,
know what's crazy? How you were saying about like all the subjects and all that stuff like that. You know how like I trade in the stock market, right? And
mhm,
what's crazy is that thing is like a whole science. And it's like a whole science, and it's math. It's the Fibonacci sequence. Like,
mhm,
and what's crazy is that the stock market is a bunch of people just buying and selling. Okay. So think about this. It's a bunch of people buying and selling. And there is things like there's indicators and all these things that take averages of what the people are doing. So then it creates patterns. And these patterns are like basically what the predictable quote unquote people have done throughout time. So then you trade off those quote unquote patterns. But when you look at these patterns that the people are unconsciously doing, they create a Fibonacci sequence. They create some type of science. You get what I'm saying?
exactly.
So it's a whole mental, like the stock market is all mental. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, that's risky and this and that. It's like, your life is risky. Like,
Yes,
okay,
exactly.
like at the end of the day, you learn how to trade your money for time, not your time for money. And what I love about it is that it's all psychological, because it goes back to whatever you were learned about money, about anything, and how you make decisions. How do you make them off fear, this, that, you know, you go into fight or flight mode. Like, that's what we're in all the time because of the background that we come from, that's so heavy. And if this stock market that moves money, that moves the world, is based off the psychology of people, this is what we mean about everything is connected. You know what I mean? The
Yeah.
money, how you move with money, how you think about money. Then when it comes to history, what do you teach your children about history? What do you know about history? How do you feel? Because let's say you were told that let's say you never met your dad or something like that, or your grandpa, and then you end up finding out like this man was like the richest king ever. Like, I'm just saying, right? Wouldn't that make you feel different inside?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Aren't you going to walk with like a different sense of pride about yourself, where you come
Exactly.
from, right? And then aspire to do like, oh, wait a minute. So if I come from that lineage of type of people, then I'm really like on some real greatness, like, you know what I mean? Like ancestry that I'm walking on right now. And you feel really, really inspired. And I feel like that's what's happened when I've been getting more and more deep into my awakening of getting to know myself, like on a cellular, complete level. And that's taken every quote unquote conspiracy, every historical thing, everything that I've learned in this process of awakening, of undoing what I knew and relearning stuff. What I've created is just basically control of my life now. You know what I mean? Because it's gotten so deep into my psychology that it's really cleaning out a lot of the stuff that I don't need to subscribe to anymore, that doesn't serve me anymore in my growth. So you get all this information, then you start to like basically just like, when I say keep what works for you, it's like you've removed all these layers from your body, and now like you've just left a couple of them there, and those are the ones that are just in place within your healing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like something like that. So that's where you want to get to when it comes to this journey. You want to get to the point where you're finding yourself and who you are, and then you have to reprogram yourself the same way they program you with repetition of something. You have to reprogram yourself with your own repetition of your own reality that you want to subscribe to, whatever it may be.
Yes. And I think what you're saying about that repetition and cutting those cycles is extremely important. Because what they've done, in a sense, is make us not want to be responsible for ourselves. They've created these like lazy people that don't want to know anything. We rather not know. But a lot of the times, once I really break it down, because I've had moments where I'm like, I can't even sleep. Literally, I was having problems with my whole entire family because I saw this whole reality, and I saw this like new future. I saw a future that I have never had access to before once I understood what was being done. And I felt like I was fighting everyone. Like, no, you need to see what I see. You have to realize what I'm realizing, you know? And then I quickly understood, like you said, there was one of the steps, you know? And I quickly understood, like, okay, wait, this is just my reality. They have to see their reality for what it is. And the only way that I can do that is by in some way, shape, or form, demonstrating that, how you can have that reality. And a lot of the things is just in real life, they just change your perception of life. They've changed your perception of the things that happen to you and the outcome. And now, for example, we women, we want kids, then we have kids, then we hate kids, and we're like annoyed because we're moms. Like, this is all because they shifted your mind.
Yes.
They made you hate your children. They made you hate your life. They made you hate your job. And it's like, one of the things I realized is like, hold up, all these pieces are being played against me,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm still here. And I'm thriving, actually, because when I really thought and changed my perception about everything, I am extremely blessed. I've created this reality. I made this, even though you had all these weapons formed in my name. Okay, not specifically to me, but towards our people. So
Absolutely.
it's so important to realize your power. It's so important to never lose the hope, because in reality, the reason it's all there, the reason it's all in place is because that's how dangerous you are.
Yeah. Like it's so insane to me that so many books that I have read in my adult life, I never ever read while I was in school. And they are like really intricate parts of history that I'm like, wait a minute, why did I learn this in my 20s and my 30s? Like that don't make no sense. So it's things like that, you know, like even when you look at, I remember I went into a whole rabbit hole about maps. Oh my God.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Fun. It's a fun one, but it's a lot because
Yeah, it can be a lot.
it's so many things. You're like, wait a minute. But if this happened this year, how is this still connected? And how is that? It's wild. But point of what I'm saying is that a lot of things, what starts to not make sense to you is because you're just like, I should have known this type of thing. That's what starts happening. Like, wait a minute, why didn't I know this part, that part? And you just go into this, you want to know everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything feels like a lie. Now you want to know everything.
Yes, there's a lot of things that connected for me because of the maps. Also because all the areas that we live in now were not named the way that they were named right now.
No, we weren't.
So in reality, we're different. We're living, and if we go back in history and they tell us this history and we really think that what they're saying is true, they've named places that used to be named like that here in other places. So when you read these books, you're like, oh, okay, you read like Egypt and you think Egypt, right? But in reality, there was an Egypt here before there was an Egypt anywhere else in the world. So when you start thinking about these things and also learning about different civilizations, I think is one of the most important things also. Because when you learn about different civilizations, you really start to know where you came from. You really start to know who your real ancestors were, because you start to see this correlation in like people like you. You know what I'm saying? So it's like very important, especially, you know, us that we come from the Caribbean. And in the Caribbean, a lot of our people were brainwashed into thinking certain things.
Yeah.
So it's like, and when you really trace back the people that lived in that area before, you're like, I see why they're doing this now. I understand why the plan is so perfectly, how do you want to say, like perfectly mapped? I don't know. But they thought about literally everything.
Yeah. Like you have to think about, like, when you start to realize, like, why was this information I told them, and even things like maps and even things like that, you realize they can't, because it would destroy their entire story of whatever they gave you. So then it would just put a hole in it completely, and theirs would not make any sense. So it's like, there has to be stuff that has to be hidden for that. And for whatever reason they're doing it, at the end of the day, just as long as you can at least know where you come from as far as your ancestry, what your purpose is, what your lineage is of where you come from, because I think we all come from ancestry of greatness. And we're taught just to look at ancestors like some like peasants and slaves, and they were like, you know, at the bottom of the bottom, and maybe that was you know, a time that a few of them were in that situation. But overall, you know, there's a lot of greatness behind all of that I think we need to start tapping into more. And the more you get into knowledge of self, the more you start to tap into your ancestry side. And that's in whatever religion you believe in, whatever the case is. You know, this is all still a lineage of your history that I think everybody should know.
Agreed.
But I think we are about out time. But this was good. I hope it resonated. As far as my children, you know, I'm just gonna teach them as much as I can of whatever truth I know about history, and you know, their homeschooling school that they're in matches the history that we're teaching, which is the real history. So that makes me feel good that at least they'll learn that. And I'm also going to let them know like what the outside world teaches so they can always, defend themselves in whatever their knowledge of what they know. And that's in everything. I'm just going to be very honest with them.
Yeah, I have this like curriculum being planned where we'll look at what the world is looking like, because
Yeah,
I also want them to recognize why I teach them the things that I teach them.
exactly.
I want them to know why I'm making these decisions.
Exactly.
Um, because I want them to look at the outside world and be like, okay, I understand why. Because that's what happened to me. Like, that's how I was able to realize I kept the connection to the outside world, even though I had already seen the future, even though I had already seen my life in the future. I still kept the connection because I needed to be aware of the other people around me, what their realities were looking like, and why they were thinking that way, you
Right.
know? So adding like, take a look at Babylon is what I heard this homeschooling mom says. She has a 12-year-old and two much smaller boys, but with her older daughter, she goes on Instagram and she teaches her what the outside world is looking like currently. And I think that's very, very important, because when you hide something, it shines a brighter light on what you're doing. Like when you hide it, they're more curious. They want to go look and see.
Yeah.
So if you show it to them and you're like, this is the reason why I do this, and it's just mom trying to create a better environment for you, a better I don't want them to have to undo everything that they learned. That's basically
Yeah,
what I
exactly.
at 30 years old, I had to sit with myself and unlearn absolutely everything that I've learned in school. And it was horrible.
Mhm.
And it was so sick because people will be like, yo, but we all took school and it's not that bad. And I'm like, no, you don't understand how bad it really truly is when you really have to undo all these quote unquote realities that were created for you, because you didn't come up with these. So
No.
just having that mindset of like, yo, let's peep at what these people are doing, let's look at this. You seen the audio that's like, look at this, look, come here, look at this.
No.
It's basically that, like, yo, come see this BS, look at how these people are acting. And I think it's really important, like you said, to teach them that side of it also.
No, yeah. Like, and you know what, at the end of the day, truth be told, man, none of us really know shit. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
just you're never gonna know everything. You're only gonna, can backtrack for so much. And this planet has been here for gazillion, bazillion of years. And you know, do what works for you. Just don't judge other people in what they do. Don't assume someone is crazy without even really understanding how that part of whatever the quote unquote conspiracies affects them personally in their lives. Like, we don't know what people are going through. We don't know what people been through. So we can only just respect everybody's decision on what they do in their personal journey. And you focus on going on your own personal journey fearlessly without worrying about what other people are going to think about you. Stand in your truth, whatever it may be. Like, don't be afraid to do that. Like, stand in your truth unapologetically of whatever you subscribe to in life. And just make sure that if you're going to stand in your truth, that the proof is in the pudding, and seeing that your life is also in a very progressive manner, and you're in a state of gratitude at all times. And if that's the way you're moving, then you're moving in the right path at the end of the day.
Having compassion, not only for
Oh,
others,
yes,
but
compassion is a
especially
good
for
one.
yourself. Yeah, because that's why we're the way that we are. We hate each other because we don't have compassion for ourselves, so we cannot have compassion for other people. I believe that's a really strong one. Because when you can sit with someone and have a conversation, like just to share information, even if you're on the totally different sides of the spectrum, if you have compassion for that person, you don't end up arguing. You only end up arguing and fighting when you honestly don't care
Yeah.
enough.
No, I agree. I agree. I have friends that think completely different than what I think. I have so many like different types of people that I rock with. And it's just the fact that we all have respect for each other no matter what we subscribe to, no matter what we believe in. One thing we know is that all of us are great people, period. And we respect each other. And that's why I'm able to vibe out with so many different types of people with different, thoughts of minds.
Exactly.
If that makes sense. Thoughts of minds. All right, John. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next Monday for another episode. Make sure to tell a friend to follow us. Make sure to leave a review as well. Rate us, hopefully 5 stars. But leave us a review. We love to see reviews. You guys have been giving some awesome reviews, and I appreciate that. Thank you for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will catch you guys next week. Peace out.